welcome everybody to today's event. Namaste and good afternoon. I'm Maitri Tripathi from Unido. Pleased to welcome you all to the virtual launch of Building Business Back from Crisis of COVID-19, which aims to support MSMEs in the post-lockdown phase so that they can get their businesses back on track. So we have the gracious presence of India's Sherpa to G20 and Honorable Member of Parliament, Shri Suresh Prabhuji, who was kind enough to give his time and consented to be the chief guest for today's virtual launch, as is like very common these days. I would like to welcome you, sir. And to begin with, I would request Dr. Rene Van Berkel, Unido representative, to please set the context for today's event.
Thank you very much. And also from my side, welcome to Honorable Suresh Prabhu. I would like to, given that we are talking about COVID-19, I would like to maybe take a moment to express also sympathy with those affected by the COVID crisis, by the health crisis in particular. If we talk already now about more than 3 million people globally, more than 30,000 in India. So we are clearly talking about quite a huge impact that nobody has really thought about before. More than 1,000 deaths in India, 200,000 deaths globally. So clearly we are in a situation which is a crisis. And in that regard, I would also like to pay tribute to those people who are fighting the front lines, particularly the healthcare sector, but also the essential services. So I would like to give maybe a few slides of background to this building back business from crisis. Maybe first by saying that Unido, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in India, is a specialized agency that works on inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And in India, we have basically 4 pillars that we work on: productive and resilient MSMEs, solutions for climate, resources and environment, and then inclusive and responsible business change and value change, and strategic policy for industrial transformation. We'll talk most about the first pillar, but I want to just maybe highlight that Unido is also quite active on the biomedical waste management, and that of course in the whole combating the COVID crisis is also a very important item, that we prevent the further spread of COVID disease through the waste management system. But our B3C initiative, Building Business Back from Crisis, is clearly under the MSME component. And under the MSME component, with the MSME sector, we basically work on the issues of productivity, so lean management, Kaizen, and related issues, mainly with the DPIIT, with DHI and Uday Pride, which is our joint initiative with ACMA. And then we have quite a lot of work on energy and environment with basically the DC's MSME office and Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and increasingly also on innovation, the Department of Science and Technology, and also our Clean Tech Innovation Program, Facility for Low Carbon Technology Deployment. But I don't want to speak too much about it. I would like to go back to the COVID crisis and report that because of our MSME work, we did a stock take during the 9th to 12th of April, early this month. So that was just at the end, towards the end of what now is known as lockdown 1 period. And we spoke to about 85 MSMEs from the different sectors. And basically what everybody also knows, manufacturing had come to a standstill, and challenges were basically reported in 5 areas. First of all, a lot of uncertainty, and the uncertainty is pertaining to both the spread of the pandemic, so the health aspect, as well as the policy responses, which is basically restrictions on the movement of goods and services and people. And this is then uncertainty about what happens in India, what happens around at the local level, but also what happens globally in terms of the global value chain. And this adds to basically 4 elements, which then repeatedly are highlighted. So there's basically no demand. So demand for industrial goods and services has come to very low levels, except for the essentials. Then we see a change of the manpower. So we have all seen the images of migrant workers going back to their hometowns, but also other changes are happening. People are also asking, is it still safe to work? And then, of course, we talk now about 6 weeks or plus equipment standing idle, which basically already started before the lockdown, because like in the automotive sector, people were already short of parts coming out of China, for example, that were basically before India. And each of those adds to the cash flow crunch. So there's no income, but expenses are continuing. But it's also true that then a lot of emphasis has been put on a stimulus package, and that can overcome the cash flow constraints, but will be ultimately insufficient to restart, recover, and revitalize the MSME sector. So even though if finance becomes available, there will still be a challenge to make sure that the finance is being utilized to the best benefit of the transition to inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So that brought us to this B3C. So what's in the name? Of course, our focus is MSMEs. We recognize that the crisis, the pandemic plus the lockdown, are a crisis. And we also say it's building back. It is different from flipping a switch to switch something on. There will be really a need to reimagine and rebuild business. And we put there also, it's a from the crisis, because we cannot wait post-crisis. So there has been a deliberate thought behind the name to say that, okay, we cannot wait till this crisis is over. We need to get our act together and start working our way out towards the recovery and the restart of the economy. What is basically there, it's an initiative of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and we see it basically as a knowledge and collaboration platform to provide two main elements, and a framework for action, so to help MSMEs to think through the many challenges which are there, and to also say that crisis can now also be an opportunity to improve business. So what areas of excellence could we further enhance? And then also we are in the time frame of the Sustainable Development Goal. So how can this then add to inclusive and sustainable industrial development? And that has then been done through the system of tutorials linked with a knowledge base, fact sheets, worksheets, delivery webinars, and then MSME applications. And we do this, we have it so far developed it and plan to roll this out with partners. I want to acknowledge in particular India SME Forum, also on the call, Vinod here, and Empatech India. And we are open to expand this further. So we see this very much as today as an initial launch of the first parts, and then we work out this further later on. So I talk about the strategic approach to develop this. So that's basically back to business roadmap, which starts with planning for recovery, then cleaning up the workplace and making it COVID ready, then restarting with the core operations, then looking for opportunities for growth, and ultimately also looking at business continuity. So what can we learn from this crisis to be more prepared and more resilient in the future? I mentioned already that this is an opportunity to also look at business excellence initiatives. And we have highlighted in this initiative then 7 dimensions or 7 pillars, you might say, where improvements could be made in terms of entrepreneurship, or how we manage finances, how we deal with customers, how we organize the supply chain, the operations, how we deal with manpower. And that is also then take a look at occupational health and safety in a broader context, not just the COVID response. So I would like to leave it here. Thank you very much for this introduction. So building back business from crisis, it's our initiative to try to prepare MSMEs to take advantage of the stimulus that might come, of the opportunities that might arise, but really from a perspective that we first have to restart, then recover and revive the MSME units. So over to you, Maitra.
Thanks, Rene. Thank you for that introduction so much. And could I please request Suresh sir for his comments on this and enlighten us with his address, please.
Good evening, friends. Let me congratulate Unido for organizing this event. And what you are going to launch in the next few minutes is something so important, so topical, and so relevant, at the same time so forward-looking, that it couldn't have been done on any other time which would have been better than this. As we all know, almost the world is completely shut down. No skies are empty, so are the roads, and so are the tracks. The shops are closed, the businesses are closed, but it's a time for mind to open. It's a time when we can think about what's the best way to deal with this health emergency that is being faced by each one of us. Those who are affected, they are health-wise, they are suffering from it. And those who are taking preventive steps like you and me are also affected because we are confined to our own homes and we are not able to go out, and therefore our normal activities are definitely affected. But as I said, the mind is open and it opens the huge possibilities of how, when the whole world will open, how should we take advantage of that new world that is going to emerge out of this pandemic. The small industries, by definition, they are the most vulnerable ones because of the size, because of the scale of operations, because of their limited financial, managerial, administrative resources. They are not able to cope with difficulties that are forced on them. It is difficult in normal times for them to survive, but they don't have the capacity to deal with something which is as extraneous, as unexpected as this, and therefore they really need to find out how can they survive to begin with, and then how can they grow. I remember in 2008, after the great financial crisis, and I've said it many times, but I repeat again because that's something which I cannot forget it, is the world, particularly the Western world, felt that they must protect their own banks. And they said, these banks are too big to fail. And I was in the US at the same time speaking on some SME forum, and I said at that time, which is I think relevant even today, that they are too big to fail, that we are protecting them. But small industry is so small to survive. They are big, too big to fail, but we are too small to survive. And therefore we must take care of them, because big banks are necessary, because they are the icons of financial stability and financial activity. But more importantly, the foundation of all this is small scale businesses. The small scale business supports large businesses. As you talked about supply chains, they are the most integral and a starting point of that supply chain. They are the ones who are the lifelines, not just supply chains. They supply, as in our body, the heart gets blood from different veins. They are the ones who are actually the supplying that critical input for the economy. And therefore, making small scale industries survive is the most important part of a public policy. And therefore, I'm very happy that you are launching this program, a portal, a knowledge portal, hand-holding, guiding the small scale industries, exposing them to the new reality, sharing best practices with them from different parts of the world, and in a process, not just educate them, not just enlighten them, but strengthen their ability to deal with any contingency. And therefore, I really want to thank you, congratulate you. And Unido has been doing a phenomenal job all over the world. In fact, when it was first set up, the world was completely different. The small countries becoming independent, colonial rule was ending, and those who benefited from the industrial revolution, and that's why they colonized to sell their products, they were retreating. At that time, there was a felt need that we must provide support to the developing countries. And that's how the Unido was born. But I'm glad over a period of time, Unido has gone through transition, has reinvented itself. And as we just heard, issues related to energy, related to environment, related to waste management, related to productivity. All the issues are being dealt with by the Unido and done it in a very remarkable manner. I'm saying this with my personal experience. I used to be the senior advisor to the Director General of Unido in Vienna, when Carlos Megarinos was the Director General. I was also Minister of Industries twice. First in 1996, and then I was a Minister for Commerce and Industry only until about a few months ago. And therefore, I was also responsible for Unido as part of my various responsibilities in the ministry. Then I was also Minister for Heavy Industry and Public Enterprise separately, in amongst my 10 different positions, cabinet positions. So I dealt with auto policy. Then as a Minister of Environment, I dealt with Unido. As a Minister of Energy, I dealt with Unido. And I've dealt with Unido in many forms, including even when I was the Minister for Chemicals and Fertilizers, I should deal with Unido because we're dealing with some aspect of that. But why I'm saying this, so it's my personal experience, I know it. How Unido has done a great job and therefore it has the ability to deal with this. In India, you have worked on cluster development, you have worked on many other issues, and therefore I'm very happy that you are now working on launching this important initiative. May I request you that, as you correctly pointed out, the industry, small industry, is too fragmented by definition. They're not only small, they are micro. So they are too small, sometimes even for people to notice. So first is to give them visibility. In the economic landscape of the world, their importance is mentioned on some few occasions, but not fully realized. In fact, the exports, employment, all of the contribution of small scale sector is far, far better. In fact, if you look at it globally, the large companies acquire small companies because they know there is a talent in that company. The innovation happens there. So my request to Unido would be that let's work on providing visibility, number one. Number two, small industries have capabilities, but not always ability to take it to the logical conclusion. A good example is startup. India is now the third largest ecosystem for startups in the world. They have great ability. They think very differently, and that's why they come out with innovation. If you think in a regimented manner, you can never come out with an innovation. But having reached that level, they need a lot of support after that. So as a Commerce and Industry Minister, I had to organize on 6th of December, 2 years ago, I had organized the first ever roundtable. We invited global funds to come to India to help the small industries. I had invited to invite all the top regulators on one side of the table, sitting with on the other side the startup community, and also in middle, we as a government, as the guardian, we used to sit in and try to help them out. But regulations are outdated. Not always, but many times. Why? Because regulated a particular regime, a particular time span. The very fact that startups are thinking differently, and that's why they're successful, obviously they're not following the regime. So we need regulation to understand this. And I think Unido can play a role as a neutral body, because Unido is United Nations family. It can actually play a role of a guidance for both regulators as well as industry, and try to come out with a new age regulation, like a model regulation for fintech, for healthcare, for many areas like that. And no one can dispute the fact that we don't need regulation. We need even more regulation, because when we are dealing with health, we need regulation. In fintech, when we are dealing with somebody else's money, we need very strong regulation. But regulation must capture the realities of today. And therefore, Unido can play a very useful role in that. The third, and I think I'm just thinking aloud, and therefore I'm just saying 1, 2, 3, I'm not prepared anything. I'm just saying the technological input that a small scale industry would need. One small scale industry will emerge out of technology. They're technology startups. But those who are doing other normal old economic businesses, they also would need technology infusion for them to succeed in future. And to do that, we probably, as we used to do earlier, I know the earlier times, Unido used to specialize in this. Can you think about, in this portal itself, you can probably add those dimensions of various kind of technological aspects that the business can actually work on. Another part, and that's a very important part, is creating new supply chains, adding new value chains. India is a very successful example of being beneficiary as well as creator of some supply chains. For example, in pharmaceuticals, in generics, it's a different matter now that those companies who are making generics, they're actually not just making formulations anymore, but they develop new drug delivery system, new molecules. So they are really climbed the value chain. But initially, India became part of that, and that's how it grew. Another is good example is auto components. But I think in the post-COVID area, COVID phase, there will be new supply chains which will emerge. And for that, Unido can play a key role in making those supply chains a reality in which we can actually make small scale industry part of it and also give them training as to how to succeed in it. Other part which I mentioned, I have started, and that is the financing part. I think we should try to bring the financials of the world through a very structured program which Unido must organize for the benefit of small scale industries. Because small scale industries normally work on borrowed money. The debt equity ratio is not always helping small industries. Their working capital requirement comes from the banking system, but for their own equity and sometimes for their own term debt, they go to private and other individuals. Can we prepare a sort of a system wherein they can meet each other, and even probably in this portal itself, we can add some dimension to that. I think the future world will rely mainly on environmental issues. The world has realized the perils of not paying enough attention to the natural capital of the world, not taking enough action on climate change, not changing energy mix adequately, not dealt with different kinds of waste, whether it is human waste, industrial waste, municipal solid waste. We have not dealt with it very effectively. So I think the post-COVID world will have to deal with these issues because she cannot come to Bruce. We cannot afford to ignore it anymore. So the new businesses can focus on these areas. Firstly, to work in the environment sphere itself, do a business activity in that sphere. But secondly, whatever other businesses are doing, environmental issues will have to be mainstream into your businesses. And to do that, again, the guidance from Unido will be very useful. I can go on and on, but I know you have a very important and very interesting panel to go on. I also to go for some other program. But I can assure you one thing, that I have explained to you my closeness and relationship with Unido. So please count on my support for anything that I can do. In any capacity, I can discharge my responsibility towards such a noble cause. And I'll be very happy to do that anytime you call me to do my job. But also remember one thing, that Indian entrepreneurship is quite robust and they are really quite competent people. I'm really very, very proud of my fellow small-scale industry fraternity. My only request is, what they really need is moral support, physical support, financial support, technical support. As I lack financial, so I can only say I can give moral support. Unido, I know it's not a financing agency, but it can facilitate it by bringing people together. Convening power of Unido is huge. The acceptability of Unido is universal. The respect for Unido is in all quarters. So I think you can do that job very effectively. Let me thank you for once again for doing this program, and thank you for inviting me. I also congratulate all the fellow panelists. I could have just seen who are the panel, and I can see some of them are my colleagues from the ministries that I have held responsibility with. So I wish them well and look forward to this portal becoming a new engine for growth for small scale industry. This should be the point of first call. It's like whenever you need any problem, you keep opening your religious book. Whether it's Gita, Bible, Quran, something else. I think you should click the portal and see what is the reference I should get from the problems I'm facing today. I hope it becomes like that. I really look forward to working with you closely. Congratulating you once again. All the best to you.
Thank you so much, Suresh sir, and thank you for acknowledging and having such kind words for Unido's endeavors and for your enlightening insights. I would request you to please launch the portal for us now by playing the video.
Since I am far away from where you are, and each one of us are far away from each other, I request you to please play the video and take it as a launch by me.
Thank you.
Building Back Business from Crisis of COVID-19, an initiative of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization to support the restart, recovery and revival of the MSMEs, the backbone of Indian economy, through B3C, Building Back Business from Crisis, a knowledge and collaboration initiative to get MSMEs going, leaving barriers behind. Listen, reflect, prepare and implement. Provides a roadmap to get out of crisis, captures the opportunity to improve key business areas, hands-on tips and hints through tutorials, supportive fact sheets and checklists, supported by expert webinars.
Thank you, team, for playing this for us, and thank you, Suresh sir, for coming over and giving us so much of information, telling us about how you worked with Unido and also encouraging us for our future endeavors. Thank you so much. I would like to give it over to Dr. Rene now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Sir Prabhu. Very much appreciated your support to Unido and really also highlighting the point which you're saying that there's a lot of entrepreneurship in the MSME sector. So part of it is that we should treat the MSME sector also as a mature part of the business and not sort of a second or third class MSMEs, and that is very much appreciated by us. And we need to move forward, that we even address the tiny and micro enterprises, help them with technologies and bring up the industrial policy and the technology and the startup ecosystem. So thank you very much for your contribution. I understand you might have to leave, so thank you very much for your contribution. I will then continue and show you quickly about I hope this screen is visible. Can you, I want to share the screen. Is the screen visible?
Not yet.
Sonu, can you allow the screen there, because I wanted to show the website quickly.
Rene, you can. It's been enabled. You can share your screen.
Okay, then let's. So can you see the website here? Yes. So this is the website where you enter b3cmsme.org. No, we can't see it. Is there? So now, can you do it?
Renee, at the bottom, you have a green button which says share screen. You need to go to that and just pull it to the tab, select the tab that you want to be put on the screen.
Well, I think it worked earlier on, isn't it?
Make sure the document that you want to share is open behind.
Yeah, I wanted to show the website.
Yeah, so the website should be open.
Yeah, the website is open.
Then you share screen on the green button.
Yeah, I did that.
Are you a host?
Sono is a
All
host.
panelists now go and see. Yeah.
Renee, what is the website? What is the website called? B3C?
B3C MSM.
Yeah, it's there. It's there.
Yes, so I cannot see, but it's my colleagues are giving it. So from our hosting. So this is the website. If you go to here, you see the building business back from crisis is showing the introduction. If you go a little bit lower on the screen, scroll down, you see the business roadmap. And if you click on any of the items, you see the description highlighted there. So if you go on one, it's planning for, prepare for recovery, then ready to workplace, start your business, and then these areas there. So if you can go then on entrepreneurship, for example, you see here opened, it gives you a short description, and then there's some videos, but as we say, it's not all the videos are currently on at the moment. So if we go back to because I wanted to show some of the, to the home, and then go to click on number 2, because that's ready to workplace, so you can see how it looks like. Number 2 there, ready to workplace. And then you see there ready to workplace short description, and then there's a tutorial video which you can play. And if you go a little bit down, there are some downloadable documents. I click, for example, on the checklist, and then it opens. Click on the checklist. And then the checklist would open, I hope. Yes, make it a bit bigger if possible. Okay, we've seen that that the technology is still a challenge. But anyhow, there will be then the questions on the ready to workplace, on how we deal with the social distancing, how we do the hygiene improvements, and so on. So maybe because of the difficulties in showing this online, let's keep it for the demonstration. But this is the website b3cmsme.org. And as I highlighted in the earlier introduction, it contains a kind of a 5-step approach towards planning the business, and then 7 elements of business excellence. I would like to move on to the second part of this launch event. Unfortunately, I must say that both the JSs from Ministry of MSME and Ministry of DPIIT were called off, and were unfortunately at the last moment not able to join. But I'm joined by Vinny Mehta from the Automotive Components Manufacturing Association and Vinod Kumar from the India SME Forum. And I wanted to maybe ask Vinod to come in first and maybe share a bit of his perspectives on what is the take on where the MSME sector stands. The Honorable Suresh Prabhu has clearly said it's a backbone of industry. We need to get it back. We cannot run industry without MSMEs. That's basically his message. But how far, how well prepared is the MSME sector to proceed with the restart and rebuilding of the businesses? So Vinod Kumar, may I ask you first?
Myself, and thank you. We all know we are going to be joined by a new secretary from today, who's taking charge of the ministry, the MSME ministry, and also with a couple of other, the DC is also being transferred to another department. So we have a little bit of a void, and so the JS could not come because there was a farewell at exactly the same time right now that it's happening at the ministry itself. So nevertheless, you know, last 2 days, Rene, we've been handling all sorts of calls. The most important calls are all the MSMEs today are supposed to make payments for salaries to their staff, and none of them have any money. And apart from that, not just the salaries to staff, it's also about the Provident Fund, the tax deduction at source, the ESIC payments. Everything is sort of becoming a big issue with MSMEs at this point in time, especially the ones that are in the micro segment. People who are below 5 crores in terms of turnover, they're finding it very, very difficult to actually do anything, forget paying salaries. And we've had a lot of talk with most of the banks in India, and most of them are awaiting some sort of a package which can guarantee the additional money that they could lend to an MSME. And we are unable to understand two things in the current situation. Without liquidity, without funding, it's going to be very difficult for the Indian MSME to even think about coming back. And I wouldn't say I would say the estimate of the India SME Forum, we have 86,000 members, out of which 24,000 are micro units. I'm going to say that almost 80% of them are going to be in deep trouble. And most of them are going to actually be looking at closing down their businesses if there is no funding that comes from the center or the states. So it's a very, very precarious situation. At the same time, we have people that have some funds, some possibilities. They are negotiating with banks these days and trying to figure out how is it that they can lay out a plan. And that's where our B3C initiative is going to be very, very, very useful. You know, we talked about a 5-step plan, which looks at basically a plan for recovery. How do you recover from this onslaught of 45 days or more? We're not very sure when it's going to get over. So 45 days or more of a lull in business. So you're going to get back to your machinery, get back to your employees, your workers, and then try and put things together in the right perspective. The other very important thing is, how do you ready the workspace? Because that is a very, very big issue when it comes to social distancing. Every type of industry, so for it's retail, it's a food processing unit, or it's a textile manufacturing unit, there are varied types of principles that would guide MSMEs in order to be able to ready the workforce and the workspace, so that, you know, we don't push more infection among our workforce as and when the industries start again. The third very important thing is, when you are restarting, what are the factors to look at for restarting your business? And how do you revive growth in your business? There was a certain level at which you were doing business. Will it continue at the same level? And if no, how is it that you can look at reviving? And last but not the least, which is, how do you future-proof? Today, all our SMEs have seen the prospect of business also coming to a close for this certain period, and which has become a very, very big issue. So a lot of MSMEs are thinking about how is it that they can basically future-proof their business and ensure that such situations are catered to in the long run, in the future. And that's where the Unido initiative of building back businesses will be very, very useful as a resource base for those MSMEs. And as you're aware, we talked to almost 1.12 crore MSMEs that we have on our database, and we will ensure that each of the messages and the messaging that is given therein will reach everybody. So, and a personal thank you to Unido and to Rene and the Unido team for helping India out at this point in time by thinking of this and by setting it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wieland, for your words of support and also highlighting the need for, on one hand, the immediate challenge on how do I pay the bills at the end of this month, at the end of April that we are having today. And on the other hand, also highlighting the need to have a plan to move forward in that sense. And it has often been said, yeah, we should think about what is likely to make business sense in the coming days. And we should start with that. Where are our opportunities, and maybe some other things should be postponed for the time being, and what are the lateral opportunities? Lateral opportunities, we've probably already seen some textile companies starting to stitch face masks, and we've also seen people getting into manufacturing of ventilator parts and other essentials in that sense. So there's clearly a strategy of maybe something should be postponed because it doesn't make too much business sense right now. Something can be started, which is a restart, and something can be looked upon in a more bilateral way of expanding business. So thank you very much, Vinod. And then maybe I want to ask Vinod Mehta from the Automotive Components Manufacturing Association, what is your perspective? What's the take from the automotive sector on the restart?
For this portal. And you know, the auto component industry is dominated by small and medium enterprises. So I'm sure that it will be of great use to all of them. Having said that, I was doing an analysis of our members, and I find that more than 50% are less than 150 crores. Again, you know, very happy to work line with you because you've been doing a lot of work with us on the MSME. Yeah, hello? Hello?
Yes, you're audible again.
Yeah, I think I dropped off. So
yeah,
I
for
think
a second.
Yes. So continuing, you asked specifically about the reopening, Rene. What we feel is the entire automotive value chain needs to be opened up in unison, in togetherness. In the sense, what I mean to say is that, say, if the dealerships do not open, then the vehicle manufacturers cannot make vehicles because they will only add up to more inventories. Already there is an inventory of 2 to 3 weeks. So the more they produce, and if they cannot sell, they'll be blocking their working capital. Looking at the component industry, I mean, as you know, the automotive value chain is highly complex, but very interdependent. And also it's very widespread. It is spread across the country. Our challenge is, say today we are in a green zone, and if God help, tomorrow the same becomes a red zone. And should the factory stop, then again, the entire automotive values chain would stand to be disrupted, and one would not be able to manufacture vehicles. So what we've been making a plea to the government is that do please allow the entire value chain to open up and function in unison. And of course, we are committed to adhering to all the prescribed norms on safety and social distances. You know, we are a very process-driven industry, and everybody today, whether it is the component manufacturers or vehicle manufacturers, have made very exhaustive SOPs or restart manuals with focus on safety. So I do hope that you know, the government listens to our prayer, and hopefully we'll be allowed to manufacture because at this juncture, the entire industry is facing acute shortage of working capital, and we desperately need economic activities to start. So that's our take on restart.
Thank you, Vinny, for your perspective, and I think it's very clear that automotive is such an integrated sector that we need to create a demand for cars and vehicles before there will be any movement at the OEMs, and then the automotive component sector can pick up. With, of course, also the challenge that it will not only be affected by the Indian scenario, but also by international scenario in terms of components, which has coming in internationally, so highly complex. I would like to open it up for a few questions, and there's some I would encourage people to put it in the question and answer box so I can see and maybe pick it up. But one of the questions, and maybe let me kick off, is what basically Suraj Prabhu was also referring to, that basically many MSMEs live on borrowed money or run business on borrowed money. Is this now a time that we should look at a different way of financing, and small businesses basically pre-financing for government contracts, for larger OEM contracts, by having pay times of 30 or 45 days, and in that sense having a lot of working capital tied up is produced, which they already have, and also looking at how working capital can be provided in a more proactive way. So is this now the time, the wake-up call, to look at different ways of financing? Could I maybe get a quick reply from you both, Vinny and Vinod? So Vinod, maybe, if you may start. Seems like Vinny. Otherwise, Vinny, would you like to come in on that one, on the kind of the finance locked away from the MSMEs, and what can be done on that? How can we create a demand and do something on the long overdue payments?
Rene, my knowledge is very limited to the automotive sector, and I can only speak in concern to the automotive sector. When we look at the vehicle industry, the demand for us would be if demand is created by more sales of vehicles. And what we are asking the government is that it should put in place very quickly a scrappage policy. Now Germany and European countries are also asking for a new scrappage policy, so that newer vehicles can come on the road by replacing the older versions, and the newer version will of course be better equipped in terms of the emissions. Secondly, what we're asking the government is to reduce the GST, which is the domestic tax, by 10 percentage points from 28 to 18%, because the cost of vehicles has gone up very significantly with introduction of BS6 and also other safety features. So if we can bring the prices back to the pre-GST rates, it would help the consumers and allow for the movement of the whole value chain. And of course, in terms of capital and liquidity, MSME sectors need a very special dispensation. I do not know even banks are willing to lend them because of their quality of balance sheets and stuff like that, and their credit ratings, even if somebody has one. I guess the government has to step in case we wish for the sector to survive. It is very important at this juncture that while because of the government mandate to pay salaries, people have stayed paid salaries for the month of March. I'm talking about the lockdown period. In April, it is going to be a very big issue because people are completely out of working capital, whether it is small companies or smaller companies, but smaller companies are absolutely stretched. There is no money in the system, and government has to step in before it is really too late. Germany government is doing 60% payment, the short-term wages as it's called. In Japan, the government has come in and paying 60 to 80% of the wages. It is very important that the government of India now steps in before it's too late. So that's my take on the MSMEs. But of course, for the larger sectors, the banking sector has to put its act together. There's enough and more liquidity in the system today. The Reserve Bank has done a fantastic job. The unfortunate thing is the banks are not passing it on. But of course, the banks also need to stay viable. That's another challenge. But I'm not talking about the larger sector from small and medium enterprises, I go back, the government has to step in immediately to ensure liquidity in the system. Otherwise, they will not be able to survive. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Vinny. Maybe can I try again with Vinod? Would you like to come in on this kind of whole issue of reshuffling finance and see what can be done to basically improve structurally the financial position of the MSMEs?
Well, as we all know, we are only catering to less than 10% of the MSMEs as far as financing goes. So you're right in saying that we need very structural changes in order to be able to actually enable MSMEs, which are, and from them, the micro, which are completely left out of the entire financing bandwagon. Today, what you find is the government a few years back started Mudra loans. Now, these loans were offered to those self-employed people that wanted to start a business and also employed a couple of people or more. And so these were given up to 10 lakhs. And thereafter, the government introduced a scheme which was under the collateral guarantee scheme of which is run by SIDBI. And they were enabling entrepreneurs which did not have collateral to be able to set up their business or run their business. Now, both of these, in our understanding, the limit of this CGTMSE scheme, which went up to 2 crores, we are sure that very few people have actually benefited from it. The government also put in place the PSB loans in 59 minutes. Now, we are all aware of the situation of that in terms of how many people applied and thereafter how many people actually got, the funding. Even though they were completely fundable, the managers at the banking, at the branch level, refused to give them the funds. Now, so there is an intense need for the banking system to understand that the key to the economy of India is primarily entrepreneurs and micro, small and medium entrepreneurs. If these guys do not create jobs, there's going to be nothing available. The government is not going to be able to create more jobs. The government cannot take so many people anymore. Similarly, when it comes to large corporations, it is again the micro, small and medium enterprises which in turn outsource services, outsource manpower, outsource raw materials and parts and so on and so forth. So it is again, unless we strengthen this basic MSME sector, there is very little the economy will have to look forward to. So my feeling is that whether the RBI along with the banking institutes, the banks, they will have to relook at the entire way that each of the branch managers at the branch level or the officers at the branch level are taking care of even understanding the proposal that comes in from an entrepreneur. Most of them do not have the wherewithal to understand most of the proposals. Mr. Prabhu was just talking about we are the 3rd largest nation in terms of startups. Now, how many of startups are actually getting any type of funding from the banking system? Whereas around the world in developed ecosystems for startups, you have the banking system which comes to the fore till a certain level. In India, there is none. There's no banking system which comes to the fore there. So you have to depend on seed capital that you've got from here and there. Then you have to depend on seed capital from an investor, or then maybe sell whatever you have, including your patent, your design, everything to the next guy, because you don't have a choice. And the failure rate of startups in India also, if you look at, and if you look at what are the conditions why that happens, financing is the major condition. It's high time that the entire country, our economists, our ministers, the politicians, the bureaucrats, everybody looked at this very, very closely. Why do we still carry forward a flawed banking system, especially when the guy that is supposed to be helped? Today, if I ask somebody has a big company, there'll be bankers, queuing outside his door for getting him funds, even though he doesn't need it. But if I ask the same of a small entrepreneur who's trying to maybe have 50, 55, 100 people on his rolls and he's trying to grow to the next level, he will find it impossible, no banker will even understand if he grows from 100 rupees turnover to 200 rupees next year. The bank will say, we can't help it. You're not supposed to grow beyond 30%. We cannot help you with an escalation of more than 20%. So there is something basically wrong with the way most of our bankers are actually trained, because they are not willing to look at any type of risk. They are completely risk averse. Now, I understand that when it comes to banking or giving money to somebody, you have to be very, very careful. Careful is the word, but that doesn't mean you don't even weigh in the options of this guy going forward. That is what you're there for. You know, you are supposed to take have an understanding of how well is this guy equipped to handle the risk that comes with starting this business. And that is what is, I think, what is wrong with our system. Even though we have millions and millions of banking employees and managers and general managers and so on and so forth, none of them have any empathy towards this entire sector. I'm sorry, but it was all in my mind. So I had to vent it out somewhere.
Okay, thank you very much, Vino, because I think it's an important component that we need a mature banking system to deal with that. And basically, the way you say it, I would almost say we need more entrepreneurial banking system in the sense of taking calculated risk, making planned goals, informed, opportunity seeking rather than a rather conservative, because that's the same way that an entrepreneur will succeed. So for banks to take more of an entrepreneurial approach to deal with their finance component. I'm just looking at the screen because there's also a few questions coming up on how to deal with migrant labor. So we have all seen the TV images. We know the statistics. So many people have moved around and are maybe also in a bit of a shock situation, not immediately willing to come back. So what is, for example, your take on how businesses can manage in the situation that the migrant workers on which they were dependent will not be immediately available?
Well, my understanding of the situation is that there are a lot of micro, small, medium entrepreneurs which have held back their employees. They are looking after them. They are providing food. But there are a lot of them that were basically self-employed. Self-employed in, let's say, for example, running rickshaws, running vegetable carts, food carts, and so on and so forth. In the current state of lockdown, I stay on a building which is, I'm on the 21st floor, and right next to my building, down when I look down, there's a huge catchment of huts that are put up by such migrant labor for living in Bombay. Now, what happens is you have each of these guys. These huts are not more than 10 by 10 feet, and there is 20 of them living in that hut. So, in normal course of time, what happens is most of these guys go out early in the morning and come back late in the night, just sleep there in the hut. There's nothing else that happens. They eat outside. They spend most of their time outside. But now in this lockdown, I find the police guys coming every few hours and pushing them back into their huts. But let us be humane. How can they stay inside these 10 by 10 huts in this heat? A. B. Most of these guys were not actually employed. They were primarily self-employed, and they are out of jobs. They are out of a place to stay in. They are out of places to eat in. Most of these guys don't cook and eat food. They eat at roadside eateries and other places, which is impossible today to find. So there should have been an arrangement in every state for such people. I fail to see, having lived abroad for so many years, there are homes for the homeless. There are places for the elderly to go. We as a society have not even developed to that extent that we take care of the ones that are the most vulnerable, and which is where this entire situation, this entire problem is. As an Indian, I really feel that leaving everything else aside, the least we can do is look at the most vulnerable sections of our society and what is it that we can do for them. And they are the ones that need, all sorts of help. In the past, 15, 20 days, we've talked to over 300 industrialists who have taken in people on the factory premises, whosoever had the space. Most people don't have the space, especially in Bombay and around Bombay. But outside, on the countryside, in the rural areas, in other cities, people that have larger size factories have taken in a lot of people that are living within those premises. They're trying to provide them food and maintain cleanliness and sanitation and distance their beds apart and so on and so forth. But I feel every Indian needs to go out and do that. It's not just the responsibility of the entrepreneur to go out and find such people and bring them in, and because if they go, it's going to be impossible to get them to work back, for the next 6 months or so. So that's another aspect of this entire situation, where even if you allow me to open a plant tomorrow, which had, let's say, 300 workers, and if I don't have any of them, I have maybe 20 workers coming back. So you cut me down to size for the next 6 months till I find the labor to do whatever else I was doing and train them again and all so on and so forth. It's a very, very difficult situation.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you for elaborating on that, because indeed many of the migrant laborers are tiny enterprises in their own right in that sense. And also that saying let's take care of the most vulnerable resonates well with the UN mandate, of course, for taking care of the ones left furthest behind first. Vinny, can I also ask your perspective on what is in the automotive component sector? How is this issue of migrant labor being looked at?
So Rene, my empathy is with everybody. The challenge at this juncture is that the auto component sector has a very significant number of casual laborers or migrant laborers. Almost 70% of the employees in the industry would be the migrant laborers. Also, there are two aspects of the problem. One, of course, there is a very significant number of people who have left for their villages or for their homelands. That's one. The issue is once we open up, when we commence operations, the population that has remained has not gone back. You must understand, as a human psyche, when you are literally in an environment facing death, if I may say so, your first thoughts are to be with your family. So the challenge is, would those people, when we open up, when the roads open up, would they wish they would want to go back home and be with their families? So that's another challenge that may well be a reality. There is a third element to the issue, is that, some of the government schemes such as the Jan Dhan Yojana and the Manrega program, they are going to enhance the per diem to something like rupees 250 a day. Would that mean that there would be no incentive or any attraction for the migrant labor to come back for work? Because in their mind also it is playing that, will it be safe for them to come back to work? So two things need to reassure that the workplaces are going to be very, very safe for the workmen. Also, maybe somewhere the government needs to be doing some kind of a campaign to say that, hey, this is a disease, probably the mortality rate is not as great as what you sort of, because you're encountering the numbers, but percentage wise, probably 85% of the people come back hale and hearty, they don't die, right? So you need to build a degree of confidence in the people to come back to work. That would be very critical. Also, thirdly, I was talking to a vehicle manufacturer, and he said that, look, if I am going to abide by the social distancing norms of 1.5 meters or 6 feet, as is being said, then the productivity goes down to 40 to 50%. The capacity is utilization becomes 40% or 50%. So the challenge would be, even say things become normal, but to follow social distancing, continue to follow social distancing, you would not be able to ramp up to full capacity. So these are some of the initial issues that we are struggling with at this juncture as we open up. But of course, it's a given that when you open up, because the poor consumer sentiment, probably initially the capacity with which you will open will probably 10, 20 or 30%. We don't see more than 30% at this juncture. And of course, should it ramp up, it will be a challenge because labor availability at this juncture is really not there.
Thank you, Vinny, and also indeed, I think the challenges of creating a safe workplace, particularly in more manufacturing environments and so on, which are set up production lines.
Rene, I must mention that again, the small and medium enterprises are also very stretched in terms of putting following to teeth the SOPs and social distancing norms that the government is talking about, because that also requires resources. It's not easy for them.
No, it is it's not easy on the side of the entrepreneur, the owner of the business to accommodate for this. I think it's also a risk factor that the employees, the workmen will feel that they will be at risk coming back to work. So it's on both sides something needed. I want to come to one more issue before we maybe come to a close, because I see one, and stay with Vinny if that's allowed, because some people have basically said, yeah, if you look at the Great Recession and other economic downtimes, then it's largely been large government contracts that started to trigger investments and trigger the economy again. And we can also see that maybe an infrastructure project in energy, but maybe also in the transportation sector. So do you think that now with the social distancing norms, for example, would we see a demand increasing for private vehicles, but also for buses, that people are saying, no, I can't go with the metro anymore, I need a private car? Or that people are saying, yeah, I can go with the bus, but the bus instead of 50 or 60 people can only have 20 people, so we need 3 times the numbers of buses. Do you see that happening, or what's your take on that?
So Rene, the business models will undergo quite a bit of change. Also, you would see various kinds of opportunity coming by. First, talking about, say, on a product category, what could well be a reality, as you said, is that the shared mobility would probably take a backseat for a while, definitely, because you would definitely not feel safe in sharing your vehicle with somebody. So private vehicles may sort of witness an uptick. But again, you must understand that there is a problem of liquidity with individuals. Also, people are not sure whether they're going to have their jobs or not. Everybody is going to be suffering pay cuts. So liquidity, even with individuals, is going to be issue. So probably what you will see is entry-level vehicles, whether it is small cars, whether it is entry-level two-wheelers, which is like 125 cc's or below. These kind of products probably will have a better market opportunity or demand. That apart, in transportation, say buses and stuff like that, of course, you would need some changes in the interiors to maintain social distancing and the number of people that you can take in. And of course, this is purely a government subject, and the industry has been lobbying the government to ask them to buy more of these products. So hopefully this could be a little bit of a silver lining. This is more from a product category, but also what would undergo change is the shop floors. You would find a lot of redesigning of the shop floors, but not just the redesigning. There will be a lot of, the industries would go asset light, as we say, okay? lot of the offices will operate out of homes, and the shop floors will be redesigned to take into account the social distancing, but also there will be a lot of automation that you will come about because we do not know how long will this fear psychosis remain in the mindsets of the people, of the labor, not to come back to the shop floor. So you will see a lot of digitization coming in on the shop floors. Yeah. Yes, René, I'm done.
Thank you, Vinny. And I think you're right. You refer to a new normal, and it's probably going to benefit from things which were already happening on the kind of digitalization of manufacturing with Industry 4.0 and so on. So maybe this might be an area where you say, okay, it's going to be more difficult to have people on the shop floor. So automation could come in as a logical solution to that. I think I'm also looking at the time. I think I would like to maybe wrap up here. I see there's more questions, and maybe some of them we can answer offline. So maybe I think what the Honourable Suresh Prabhu was saying, that yes, it's a backbone of India to have the MSME sector. We need to take care of them. We need to take them serious as entrepreneurs, and there's good entrepreneurship there. But we see certainly now a number of challenges. We discussed on finance, and I think some people have also highlighted to me in the past weeks. Yeah, so it's also quite a shock for small businesses that now all of a sudden being out of money in basically in no time. So there's also the social dimension of how we deal with that. How can we provide counseling and build some degree of confidence also for entrepreneurs there, that it's not a personal failure, but it's business failure in that sense. So something might be needed there. And then we discussed on the kind of banking system becoming more entrepreneurial and looking at creating demand and related issues. So I think it's clear where I started a bit more than an hour ago, is that the normal will not return. The normal in the current during COVID is already quite different, and after COVID crisis it will certainly be again different. And we have no clue on, or we have some ideas on what might change, but we don't have a final picture there. So in that sense, it's also that we've, and then I will come back to the virtual launch today of this B3C platform. That we think that we need to bring more knowledge to this, and not say, okay, I just start again of what I did before, because that's probably going to be not the right approach. So if you see that we open and we start again with opportunity seeking, what is my business proposition? How can I make value out of the assets which I have, of the inventories of the customers which I have? And that's very much the trust of what Unido has been trying to do with this B3C platform. Some people have asked for it. It's basically b3cmsme.org. But you would also see it elsewhere. So with that, I would very much like to thank Vinod and Vinny for your contribution. Thank you so much, and also for joining with Unido, working with Unido on this initiative. We really look forward to try to bring this knowledge, not just to a few of us sitting in Mumbai and in Delhi, but also to our MSME sectors in the different clusters that we have all around the country. So thank you very much. Thank you all for participation, and I hope that we can take this discussion forward to help MSMEs to basically restart, recover, and revive their businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, René, and to the entire Unido team, including Maitri. She did a good job. Thank you very much, friends.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank our panelists, Vinodji and Vinny Mehtaji, for their valuable time and the insightful discussion we had, though remotely, but it didn't seem to be like that. And thank you, René. This wouldn't have been possible without your encouragement and the very basic idea of having a product like this to support the MSMEs and rejuvenate their businesses. And thank you all the participants for making this launch a success. May we be able to actually reach out to maximum possible small industries, and the portal serves as a guide to them in the coming days. On this note, thanks again and have a great evening, all of you. Thanks.
You too. Stay safe. Wow.
Thank you.